What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Shane Vitko Podcast. I got my first guest, and I'm pretty excited about this. This has been something that we've been talking about since, I don't know, easily 7-8 years now, and just never were able to make it happen. So today's guest is none other than Jason McDonald, known as J-Mac, the Baxter. And Jay and I have known each other for quite some time. But what was funny is that we were talking today, and I was like, I think we've maybe been in each other's presence, I think twice in real life. I met Jay, I think it was when I first got out of prison. So I'd say like around 2012, 2013, something like that. And one of my friends was getting a haircut, and he went to where Jay was working as a barber. And Jay and I met, and it was just kind of like one of those things of like mutual respect. You kind of read each other and go, this guy gets it. And we remain friends. And, this is the thing about, I guess, one of the importances of social media, because although we're not, in each other's lives immediately, like where you live down the street from me, we never got high together. We were never in prison together. But you're somebody that I've kept in touch with through, all these years. And I know a lot about you. You know a lot about me. We keep in touch. We talk on the phone. We have real life conversations. And I'm just really glad to have you here today, man. So welcome, dude. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It has been a long time coming. So I've been psyched, and we've chatted a little bit leading up to this as far as questions and just what to talk about, and I'm looking forward to it, and especially some of the things we touched on before, earlier today. I'm excited for this for sure.
All right, dude. So I want to jump right into it. So my first question for you is, what was home life like for you as a kid?
Home life, very dysfunctional. Single mom. Mom was an addict. My mom had me at 16, so very young. And then had my brother at 23, so it was me and my brother. Dad's out of the picture.
Where's
and
Dad?
My dad was, he was around, but not like living with us, or not really much in my life.
He was the dad for you and your brother?
No, two different dads.
Okay.
And my mom was always hanging around with like bikers and just wild party scene and lots of freedom pretty young. That's kind of how the tagging started, about super young and stealing and whatnot, but just very dysfunctional home. But then I had the tight-knit Italian side. So even though my dad wasn't there, that side of the family, though, was my tight-knit Italian side. So I'm half Italian, half Irish. I always joke and say I'm half Italian, half traumatized. But that was the tight-knit side, was my dad's side. My grandmother, my aunts, all that. So it's like sometimes on the weekend when I'd visit that side of the family, it was like kind of love and unconditional. And then during the week in school, with my mom and whatnot, was just very chaotic and very fear-based. I talk about fear a lot, no matter whether it's a podcast or it's running group or a meeting, whatever. Fear is a huge part of my upbringing. Dysfunction, drugs, alcohol. And yeah, it went like that for quite some time. That was the home life, was very chaotic.
And what city did you grow up in?
Most of my childhood was Malden, then a little bit, 2-3 years in Medford, high school in Melrose. Then after that, it was everywhere: East Boston, Winthrop, Chelsea, back to Malden. And then as I got a little bit older, I even lived in Florida for a couple of years.
Right. Now, did you, I've talked about this before of like, how much it was, like how important it was for me to have this street city kid identity growing up, and like for me growing up in Reading, that wasn't the coolest place. Cool, tough kids weren't, they were bred there, but that's not, people don't think about that. So I've talked about, like, I remember taking the bus and the subway and all that stuff. And like Malden is kind of one of those first places that, before you really get to the, Boston proper, right, of Dorchester and all that kind of thing. But Malden was like, that's where I learned kind of how to be a criminal and then take that back to my town, much like if so I think what I'm saying is like, so for you to go to school in Melrose, like the kids must have been like, holy shit, here's a kid that's like from Malden, Medford, like you brought that aura to Melrose where these kids are from Melrose. And I can imagine the same thing like Reading. So that gives you this kind of status of like, here's this city kid. Was that kind of your experience?
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because you look at Malden and Melrose as completely different, especially back then. We're talking mid 90s. And when I moved to Melrose, I was already heavily into graffiti for like a few years at that point. And when I first moved to Melrose, believe it or not, it was not a punishment, but I was about to get kicked out of Medford High. So I had to move in with my dad. So my dad that really wasn't there now became my roommate. I always joke and say roommate because he really wasn't like a father figure. So
Now, was your
when I
dad
moved,
young too? Because you said your mom was 16. I'm assuming he wasn't
and he was 18.
5.
Yeah, he was 18. She was 16, just about to be 17. And I move in with him. I start tagging, catching tags all over the city. And the fucked up thing is that's when I caught one of my first cases. Someone ratted on me because
And
you had kids that were like dabbling. This was my experience in the mid 90s moving to Melrose from Medford actually. So Malden, then Medford, then from Medford to Melrose. I start tagging, catching tags, and there was a difference between kids that were taking spray paint from fucking NHD back then by Pine Banks, or kids like me that had certain caps and whatnot. So drew a lot of attention, catch some tags, and my dad was like a roommate, so my house was the party house. So even though I kind of moved into Melrose back then as like the outside kid, I was accepted early on because my house is the party house, So it was kind of a culture shock to some because then you come to my house, we'd have a DJ, I'd have a tattoo artist. We had like, it was a fucking frat house basically back then, especially young. And
any kid at home with any dysfunction, that's the place. Let me sign me up.
oh,
Been there.
yeah, it was everyone slept there, and then it's like we're getting tattoo parties, and my dad would get us, alcohol on certain nights, and I learned how to manipulate very young because my dad was an addict and smoked. I could have someone come over and be like, oh, just throw my dad something, and you just learn to manipulate young, and it seemed cool back then, but I had no guidance.
So that's what I was going to say too, before we just kind of breeze past that. That must have been tough, dude. I'd imagine that you have to kind of grow up or raise yourself. Like where's the time for you to be a kid with a parent figure? I feel like most people that I know in that kind of situation, you end up growing up with your parents kind of being like friends or like aunts or uncles growing up your whole life, right?
Yeah, it was between my mom and my dad, neither parent was I ever able to go to for like emotional support. And my dad wasn't the type, he never taught me really how to defend myself. He was very manipulative. I'm 45 now, going to be 46 in a couple months. I honestly say that my mom's a little spitfire, very like passionate, kind of wild. I've definitely taken that from her. And my dad was always very good with words. Like he was very good with talking to people. I always just say I took that trait though and used it for the positive. As far as what I do for treatment or even shit on the street, just you get go with words and how to, work with people. And I got that from them, but I definitely never had any, like structure or being able to go to them for shit that's like fucking killing you on the inside,
Did you have anyone for that emotional piece?
Not really. And then my grandfather was like very old school, which is my mom's dad. He's like an old school Chelsea firefighter, fucking was in the military, like just very like, hard edge, got to have good credit. You got to have this. I never really had anyone family wise as far as like who you could talk to in that sense.
So next thing I want to know is when did you realize that you didn't see the world the same way as other kids? Was that very young?
Damn, that is a good question. That's probably one of the ones you were talking about, I'm assuming. I like that one. I don't know if I have like a specific age, but I can remember super young. I mean, the first time I stole something, I've talked about this before. First time I stole something, I was 8 years old and it was whiteout. And I went and tagged behind the building that me and my mom and my little brother, he was a
Take
newborn
you
at that
3.5
point.
hours like this, dipping it in.
Dude, it just, no one showed me how to steal. No one, I don't know, it was just rebellion. Not rebellion, it was like lashing out because I feel like I didn't have a voice at home. So I started doing stuff young, and I liked being very devious with the stealing and the graffiti and there's something mysterious that started with writing your name, then it turned into a nickname because obviously you don't want to write your real name. Um, and I always felt different. I think because of how much we moved. So we were on Section 8 welfare, so my mom could never hold apartments. You know, there's drugs involved. New school district, then a new city, then another school district, then maybe the same city but a different district. I never was in the same school for more than 4 years. You know, so I don't have, in a way I kind of like it nowadays if I'm being completely blunt, because I had so many different upbringings in this city, traveling to here. I have friends from all over,
Right.
but I definitely felt different because some of these towns I'd go to, the kids would have both parents. They played hockey. I loved hockey as a kid. I fucking was obsessed with hockey, but my mom couldn't afford it. And I always remember feeling like, well, why can't I do what these kids are doing?
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of lashed out and did. I just was heavily involved in the street young because that's what we had free reign to do. The stealing, the train tracks, the I loved. When I tell you that my art saved my life, it 100% started when I was a kid because you're able to kind of venture out and create your own world. It's almost like a superhero, so to speak, and that's like your superpower. So at night, or even sometimes during the day, but at night you creep out and go in the yards, or you get the trains, or you do whatever. And it's this alter ego that no one knows about, but it's super exciting when people see the aftermath of what you paint.
Now, do you remember the feeling that first time you were 8 when you stole the whiteout? Did you feel, like I'm going to shit my pants, I might throw up? And then ultimately that led to like, fuck yeah, that was cool. I got away with it. I want to do that again.
The thing I do remember from that day that always sticks out is the fact that I was so cautious about looking to the left and right. Like I wasn't just like, oh, let me just take this.
Right.
I remember looking, and because I'm so little, they probably really weren't paying attention to me. Excuse me. But I remember looking to the left and right and taking it and going behind. It was a brick building across from Oak Grove. So it was the end of the Orange Line, which that's another key part of my story. Most of my childhood, especially the younger years leading up to when I started graffiti, we always lived kind of near the train line. So I first started really getting up and doing graffiti all on the Orange Line leading all into Boston because you wanted everyone to see it.
Right.
So it was about doing the big bubble letters, the big simples, then you start learning the terminology. I started getting the videos and just, you realize like some kids are like that with Spider-Man and Superman and the comic books. I was never really into that. I like the art of it, but I was into like graffiti magazines and coming up with letters. And it was like a way to communicate with the world, but it was in like an underground way.
And I kind of meant to ask this in the beginning, but why the Baxter? How'd you get that name? Where'd that come from?
This is actually, I did share this one time, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with this one. So, in the graffiti world, everyone has their name. Some people write their, like I wrote J-Mac when I was super young, and it was like, nah, that's stupid. And I was writing like sin and chaos and all these stereotypical words that a lot of 12, 13-year-old kids write. And this is kind of a pretty fucking funny story. I was 14, about to turn 15. You know how when you come out of the shower, the fucking mirror is fogged up?
Right.
I still at 45 sometimes catch tags in that, right? So I remember coming out. I was going through this stage trying to figure out what I wanted to write because in graffiti, it's all about, some people just got like a really catchy name or something that's like, oh, that sounds cool. So I just started doing like a BA, and I liked the BA. So the first night I did it, I actually did a CH, and I was like, oh, back, but like BACH, like I'll spell it different. Like graffiti, you just fucking spell something or flip a word backwards, whatever. So I ended up switching it to back, BACK. No meaning at all, but I was like, I like the word, but I was like, what the fuck? What is this? One day, me and my friend were at Malden Station on the train, and I had been writing back for, I think, a couple weeks now at this point. And I liked it, but it just wasn't grabbing me. He actually goes, yo, this would be really dope. He wrote it down on the bench. He spelled out badass city kid. And it was like a fucking light bulb went off in my head. You couldn't even make this shit up any better if it was scripted. The Orange Line train's pulling up. We're waiting to go into Boston. Because I mainly lived near Malden Station or Wellington.
Right.
Couple stops in, you're in town. From that day forward, I was like, that's what that stands for. That's the acronym for BACK. But what's even, a little bit more in depth about that is that I've never actually painted that. Like, I've never done a piece that spells out Badass City Kids, so a lot of people don't know. And then they go, what the hell is Baxter? When Instagram started years ago, I purposely did it to, like, accent the Boston accent.
Right.
So, Baxter, and some people are like,
what is it just back? Has it always just been the tag, been basically BACK?
Yeah, or I add an S, or in the graffiti world, we add ism, which is cool because I like that because of alcoholism or addiction. It's like, I do like backism. You can see some of the stuff.
Yeah.
And then over time, it's like that basic tag at 8 years old in 1988, taking white out and just writing JM on my apartment building. I still haven't lost sight of the truest art form of graffiti, which a lot of people lose sight of, is the tag. It's not always the colorful, glamorous shit. It's the tag. And so that's what BACK stands for. It's Badass City Kid.
I'll tell you a quick little story about my tagging experience. There was a couple kids from Reading that were pretty good. There was one kid that used to tag Self, and then another kid that used to tag, I think, Phrase, right? So I would skip class with these kids, and they had these big fat markers, and same thing. I remember being like, what's cool? And like my friend Chris used to tag Steezo, and like he was really good at drawing and art and everything. It always looked so clean. Same thing with these kids. They're doing all these stuff and everything. And I'm like, Red Dog Beer had just come out at the time. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to go with. And I'm like trying to do Red Dog and get the E to connect to the R and the D. And like, dude, awful. The worst person to ever attempt tagging, me. And like you said, it's funny how you mentioned like the Baxter, the ism. Like I remember Oner. ONER would always be a thing. So it'd be Self Oner, Phase Oner, all this thing, and then the dots and all this shit. And just like same thing, dude. Like I get out in this fog on the thing and I still try my hardest. And like for me, it's always an ST for some reason is like what I feel comfortable with. And that's funny. I wonder if that's a thing like in the graffiti world of like what all of a sudden just for no rhyme or reason feels comfortable as your first two letters. And does that start into what eventually ends up becoming your name, if that's something that you end up following?
Yeah, I don't know the psyche behind that, but I know you'll appreciate this because you jujitsu and fight and your whole background. And I have friends that are pro fighters, and we've done this. I used to actually go, shout out to my boy Ray. He owns New England Top Team, and I trained under him a couple different times. I never took it serious. I kind of wish I did, but when we'd be like sparring or fucking around, we'd joke. And I'd tell them like how hand styles, like you just said, the ST, when you just did that whole thing with the ST, is that it's almost like fluid motion, like you're using your hands. So when I would do that, see how if you see in the back there, there's like those tags back there. We would, when you just said the ST, it just reminded me of that because he would try to do that where, when you spar or fighting, especially boxing, it's almost like a flow of like dancing. And he would use it. We one time, this sounds kind of crazy, but we were trying to do words, but with our hands, like when you're trying to make contact with someone else. Right. So it's just a weird angle of trying to get it.
Off. You were doing
it was like on some goofing around shit. Obviously, we weren't trying to like fucking hurt each other, but when you just did the whole ST, that's what it reminded me of.
What emotions ran your life? I know you talk a lot about fear, but what emotions ran your life the most growing up? Fear, anger, rage, pride, ego, and like which had the strongest hold on you, and why do you think?
Fear, 100%. Anxiety, rage, and anger, and that stuff actually came with as the years increased with dealing with the anxiety and the fear and not dealing with it. Like I said, I moved around a lot. So with that comes, in my experience, I got in really easy with the girls wherever I moved because you're the new kid and they were like, oh, and I was kind of into breakdancing and graffiti and I'd have to fucking fight some fucking dork because he's the captain of the football team. And I'm like, I don't even know you. And you're 4 times the size of me. I'm actually not a threat physically to you, but they wouldn't like just, either in high school, my house was the party house. The fighting kind of subsided there. I was more like friendly with everyone in high school then, but fear, anxiety because I was always nervous for like part of the fear, you project what the fuck's going to happen in the future, and most of the time it's made up. And that's stuff that didn't make sense till later. But the fear and rage started to be, the rage and anger started to be. I remember one time, man, getting fucking, I don't want to say jumped because this time I didn't actually physically get hit, but it was me, one of my boys, and a few girls. It was junior high, and I was with mainly girls. And I don't know if you know Medford at all, but like the Riverside projects, you go down the end and there's Medford Square. All my boys were with me that are from Riverside projects. The second they left, these kids from South Medford I have an issue with, they roll on me. They definitely purposely seen that those dudes were leaving, and now it's like I'm vulnerable. But the fucking way that I got punked in front of these girls at 14 years old, bro, started to like really, it changed. I never really felt like that before. You just get, it's like the cork's about to pop and you're going to fucking just wow out. And I took it and I just, I didn't want to get my ass beat. I was tiny, bro, as a kid, I was so timid and tiny. But the rage I felt once that kid left, this is one of the first times where I started to lash out, where we ended up going to where we go and we would actually shoot guns in the fucking woods at old kegs and whatnot. And I was like, I've definitely never even fucking shared this out loud, but I was like, we're going to fucking Barry Park in South Medford later tonight, and we're just going to light up a couple. Like, that's, and my boy was like, yeah, he was with it. He was like one of those short little kids that he's done so much time since then. So he didn't give a fuck. He co-signed it like, yeah. Luckily, God was looking out for me because we walked all the way there that night and no one was at that park. But I can honestly tell you, Shane, that the rage and the just like, it's ego too, because you're with women, you're with girls, and they're fucking saying they're going to beat the shit out of you and you're not really acting tough. I was like cowering down, and that's where the shift started, where the rage and anger started to go more into like, I'm not getting picked on anymore. Yeah. So I started to be a little bit more of the aggressor. I'm not even going to sit here in front like I got these crazy long list of stories where I acted out, but I definitely have quite a few where that switched from the anger and the rage to I'm going to lash out now.
Well, it's crazy because it's like, you think about, I know that I can think of these certain situations. Like, I'll never forget, it was in middle school. So it was a 6th, 7th, 8th grade dance. I wasn't in 8th grade nonetheless. And, I was dating an older girl. I thought I was so cool because like I was in 6th, she was in 8th kind of thing. And something happened, right? I wasn't nice to her. We got who knows what. But next thing I know, I roll up to the dance and it's not like me and my friends weren't like nerds that just stood in the corner. So like once we all rolled there together, and then this one's off with a girl, this one's over here, these ones are smoking cigarettes, doing whatever. And I'm there by myself at one point. And next thing you know, a bunch of the older kids come up to me, and I will never forget, I'm not going to say his name, but this kid grabbed me by my shirt and lifted me up off my feet, dude, pinned against the wall, screaming, "You have a fucking," all this shit. And I just, like a pinata, dude, just sat there and took it. And, it's those kind of things where you go like, I just got punked so hard, dude. Never will I let that. I don't care if I have to go take fucking karate in the mountains somewhere for the next 5 years. Nobody's ever doing that to me ever again,
It was a life, like you're saying, a pivotal moment. When you just said that, though, I also was in 5th grade at Immaculate Conception. So one year I went to Catholic school. I got kicked out. 5th grade, I'm in Immaculate Conception, and my girlfriend was in 7th grade in the other building, and I snuck into one of the fucking dances. And I liked dancing when I was younger, too. So when I showed up, looking back, I was like, dude, I just was like fucking wired to be like the center of attention or just do shit to almost get caught.
Well, that's
because not only did I
too is like, what was your thing? Like, did you have swagger? Did you use humor? Like, how did you get into like a crowd and not just end up being a kid that carries his book bag around the hallways, nervous all the time? Like, what was your thing that got you into that? Like, icebreaker.
Looking back at it, it ended up being humor, like you just said, because I actually sacrificed a lot of freedom in school, like getting suspended, desk in the hallway, because I started to realize, and I'm even like that nowadays, I use it like with addicts and treatment and whatnot, is that I realized if I can make some of these dudes laugh when I'm the new kid, they're most likely not going to want to fuck you up. Obviously, if you don't try to date or talk to their girl, shit like that.
That helped.
But laughing and doing shit, and then also with certain crowds doing some outlandish, being the wild child. This dude's fucking climbing up on this billboard and fucking doing graffiti and just life of the party, because my house was the party, making people laugh. That stuff brings on hate and bullshit too. But in my experience, to get into those crowds, it was just like, be yourself, be funny, make people laugh. You know what I mean?
I think
Be
what's funny,
creative.
though, is how we say be yourself, be funny, when we weren't being ourselves, right? And this is what I've noticed, that a lot of the people that I know, like, people are always like, you're so funny, it's so natural, why don't you do stand-up, all this shit? And I'm thinking, like, it's not even really that, what the fuck are you talking about, right? But if I think about it, and like, you know, I dabbled a little bit in comedy, and some of the comedians that I know and shit, and trauma lives, right? So I feel like people that end up having a good humor or whatever is because, I don't know if it's, again, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know if it's hypervigilance or what it is, but I feel like a lot of us, it's from sitting back and watching and observing and watching people get roasted and watching people's reaction. And it's just, you learn to do graffiti. I think it's the same thing, where it's an art that you start to learn it by sitting back and taking in these situations and going, man, that was good. That dude got him. That was a good one. I get it. And then you couple that with the wit and the quickness and all that stuff. And then next thing you know, that does form your identity. And then you get to go, now I get to go, let me be myself, right? But I had to learn how to become that guy, because I see people that still try to do it now, and it's like, and, you know, try knitting or something, dude, because it's just not fucking, you missed the boat, you know?
Well, the whole being yourself thing, that definitely, yes, it comes all the time, because I tried to be like a chameleon with all these different, like, move to this school. I did like hockey as a kid, but I'll tell you one thing, even though I liked hockey, I didn't really care for the crowd of kids that played hockey, if that makes sense. Like, I liked the sport of hockey, but I didn't care for the crowd. Here's another funny thing that might blow your fucking brain. I love the act of graffiti and doing what I do. I don't like most graffiti writers. I think they're fucking bums and dorks. And I know that sounds fucking super judgmental. And that's just, but I'm being honest, it's not to fucking sound good for this. A lot of the people in that culture are like fucking haters, or they just like, kind of do stuff to be in certain cliques, where I just love, I'm a fucking big kid still coloring.
Right.
That's why I love the saying, it says the creative adult is the kid that survived, because I love drawing and doing stuff like that as a kid. And it just is transformed into being able to do that for a career as an adult, and to be yourself, which is funny because it does take a bunch of trial and error to truly end up being yourself. And the funny thing, what you say in the stand-up comedy, that's actually something that I've kind of had in the back of my mind for years, where I was like, I'd love to do an open mic, or I'd, you know, love to do this, because I've had people say, you should do that. You don't even come up with a script, and I can run a group for an hour and a half, and I get some people to absolutely belly laugh off of just shit that we relate with. Because like you said, you take in life, my brain always thinks creatively.
Right.
And I don't know if you relate with this, especially if you have a comedy background, your sense of humor is like top tier, at least in my opinion. But I sometimes think of punchlines first, and then you just build off super easy, like roasting people. Right. No one I work with ever wants to even come near me roasting wise, because they go, Jay got 4 in the chamber. That'll make you want to put him on your 4th step if he fucking roast you.
Well, honestly, the way, like, even with social media, dude, sometimes, like, people's comments, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I get that you thought that was funny, or that you know, you hate your dad, or whatever's going on, and you're lucky that I see it for that, because I'm a verbal assassin, dude. Like, this is what I spent so many years making it a job of, like, I'll make you cry, you know? And so, but then it's like, obviously that's not who I'm trying to be today, and like that's not.
But you have it in you.
Yeah, and it's like, and a part of me wants to go like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, let me just pep you with a little bit here, just so you know I could completely fucking flambe you right now. But
like, hey, I'm a recovering scumbag. I just want to let you know that.
Yeah, you know, but it is, man. It's tough, but I think the thing that's cool about comedy is it's like you get this platform to do that where it's, you know, acceptable. My issue with comedy is like, you got to go hang out at these comedy clubs starting in the next 5 hours. You got to go there at midnight, sit there all night, write your jokes, go to open mics, do all that stuff. And like, I kind of just missed the mark on that. You know, I'm not willing. I have I'm not going to like, hey babe, I'm heading into Houston. I'll be back at, you know, when you guys get up with the baby. She's going to be like, no, we're not, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So next thing I got for you is, what was the first kind of sign that I'm heading down a path that's probably not going to end well?
Um, the first thing that comes to mind is probably when denial slapped me in the face. For a long time, I didn't think I was hooked on opiates. I had dabbled with drugs as early as 13, and it wasn't until about maybe 2021. I had friends that, how are you not hooked? How are you not sick? Just certain terminology I really wasn't fucking with. No, I hadn't been to detox yet. I'd never been to treatment. And one day I woke up. It had to be 2000, right, going into 2001. And I'll never forget saying to myself, holy fuck, you 100% are hooked on opiates and have a drug problem. And I could never forget that ever since that moment. It took almost 3 years from that moment before I ended up fucking hitting rehab for the first time. But that's a significant moment in time where I realized like, wow, once you know, you can't not know, like they say. So the gig was up. Like I couldn't pretend to not be on like hooked on drugs anymore. So yeah, I was like 2000, 20 years old, because then I was an IV heroin user after that for 3 years straight.
And how old are you when you got sober?
The first time ever, 23.
That was the first time you ever tried to get sober.
Yeah.
So when you started doing graffiti, here's where I want you to get honest. What were you either chasing or running from? Like, was that kind of do you think that saved you in a sense, or not until later on? Or do you feel like that, like you were running from, you didn't want to go home? Like for me, I didn't want to be at home because I didn't want to, my dad was going to yell, scream, do whatever. So it's like, I don't care if it's me and my friends and we're just staring at each other in the park. That's what I want to do because I don't want to fucking go home.
Yeah, I didn't like the vibe of at home because it seemed like I was in my mother's way, right? Because my mother's drinking or there's people there, and so the freedom and the chaos of the street, whether it was stealing or spray painting or skateboarding, because skateboarding was big for me then. It was, if I can stay out and get into all this mischief, we'd break into JJ Nissan trucks and take cupcakes and fucking, I've broken into Army Navy stores. We were doing all this stuff. And they would give you a thrill, whatever, right? But I think I was running from one, home, and two, you're just looking for something to make you feel better. In my first drug of choice was definitely adrenaline and graffiti. And it 100% saved my life. At the time, it definitely projected me more towards the culture of drugs and graffiti. So it was a little bit wild. But I've always knew that there was a deeper purpose for me creating, if that makes sense.
Was there a big culture like that? Like, was there like like I was into the hardcore music scene and it was like one side was like had straight edge. Was there that kind of thing in the graffiti scene too? Like young, was there like kind of the people that were anti-drugs and we don't fuck with that kind of thing? Or was it kind of just everyone was getting fucked up and
There might have been. There's a lot of hardcore kids I know were actually into graffiti too. That you started to realize all these little outskirts of the culture. Me, when I first got into graffiti, I was into heavy, like skateboarding, hip hop, and my aunt, which was my godmother, lived in New York City. So I started visiting her young, so I was inspired by New York and started to meet like New York graffiti writers and whatnot as a teenager. But yeah, I didn't really know of any like straight edge scene, at least that I know of. If anything, it was the opposite. We'd go to Little Stevie's, which is over by Fenway Park, a pizza place, and all the graffiti writers from all over. So from Brighton, Roxbury, Mission Hill, Dorchester, Southie, then way the fuck out on the Green Line and shit. We'd all meet at this pizza place. Everyone's anywhere from 14 to 18, all congregating, and that's how you started, because there was no social media back then. Right. So you'd be at a pizza place, meeting this one, handing out books, and it was actually pretty cool because it was reminiscent of like the graffiti videos that I had basically grown up the last couple of years watching.
And was the kind of progression thing of like it started with weed, and then as you get a little bit older, there was kids that had coke or shit like that, and was it that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, most kids were into weed. I was probably one of the first kids to bring it around my boys because my dad smoked. So when I lived with him in high school, I was able to take that from him. And
Yeah, so drugs definitely wasn't a thing that was like tough for you to come by at a
no,
really early age.
no, and it just weed was 100% like that first gateway one that because then you're able to manipulate. If at home I know that I'm allowed to smoke weed, it's real easy to have my boy come over and just bring a couple other things.
Right.
So, but yeah, that went hand in hand with the graffiti for sure.
Another thing I'm curious about is like how do you start learning? Like, did you have, I guess, like a graffiti mentor, like an older kid? Like, how did you go? Like, you know what? Like how you talked about the orange line, right? Like knowing the route that it passes. And I know you've talked on other podcasts about after the Sox won, and you graffitied somewhere because you knew the parade would go by there, whatever it was. Like, your mind's got
Hmm.
to be sharp to start thinking about like location, right? And I know you've talked about places where you're up on some so high up on a building that one wrong thing goes wrong. That's it. There is no more JMac. All for that,
Mm.
like to get. I've seen these videos in like Russia or whatever where these dudes are on wires scaling down the side of a building to draw, to tag their name
Hmm.
all the way down the side of a building. But how
Mm.
do you develop the kind of we're going to go down to the MBTA and break in tonight and just bomb the whole side of a bus or, where?
It was progression. A big thing, like repetition's the mother of all skill, like that whole saying. When I first started doing graffiti and tagging, and I sucked. So did my boy, but we had a couple dudes that we knew that were like a year or two older that were a little bit more advanced. They might have had the throws down, the tags. They kind of making us a little hip to the lingo, because you're like, oh, bubble letters. You're like, that's fucking that. Stop being a toy. They'd make fun of us and shit. And they'd kind of school you because there's a whole culture to it. And but it's trial and error. Like you can only practice so much in books and all that shit. You got to get out in the street. And then there's times you get out there and you're like, this is garbage. You take the train the next day and you were like, this is fucking horrible. Like I went through that. That's the cool thing about this. We'd go, I'd be like over by say like Wellington, Malden, because that's like the main area. I'd have all those rooftops, all those back of those buildings scoped out, and I'd finally go and paint it. And you'd realize once you take the train the next day, you painted way too small. So it was like a learning curve, and you develop like what you got to do and how much paint, and I looking back at it, and even just answering these questions, which has been cool because I haven't really done like a too in depth with like the graffiti, which is dope. Is that it makes you realize like I've dedicated my whole fucking life to this. I started tagging at about 12, 13 years old, and I'm 45.
But I got to
You know,
imagine too that, being an addict, being the things that we are, I know for me, I'm a perfectionist. And I can't even imagine it's like, you know, I don't watch my own podcast to be like, fuck dude, I'm so cool. I watch it because I critique it and I'm going, what can I do better? What am I doing different? How is my delivery and all these like I want to be
yeah,
better. So I'm wondering like how often you take the train or did whatever and went, man, that's cool, but I could have, was it tough or did you ever get to a place that you went, fucking nailed that, dude. That one is money? Or did you have to
it's
go back and white it out, give it another shot, or however that works? I don't know if that's a.
yeah. I mean, once in a while you'd want to take your own spot back. Like, oh, I don't really care for that, but the battle of an artist is. That's why I joke. People always like, "What's your favorite paint?" I go, "You know what the best one is? The next one." Some artists they really get that. They're like, "Yo, that's how I think too," because I can critique every single thing I've painted my whole life, and especially with graffiti, the excitement, like true graffiti, right? This is the other thing too. People see like what I do, they're like, "Oh, he does graffiti." This is art. Graffiti is illegal lettering. So like when you take the orange line and like that's the true essence of graffiti, and that's the stuff that's still just so deep rooted into me. I don't give a fuck how old I am. I still am gonna, do my thing. But I look at stuff often, especially older stuff, and I kind of cringe when you're saying, "Do you ever look at stuff and say, oh, I could do that better?" Yeah, the answer is always yeah. It's almost like, when is art ever even done for an artist? You could add this, and you could do this, but you evolve as a person and an artist, and that's the fucking dopest shit. Is that I'm just kind of, you got to have fun with it. I always say, if you're not having fun, you're doing it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. So I know that heroin ended up becoming your drug of choice, IV heroin use.
Hmm.
How long did that have you in the grips? How long were you shooting dope?
2001 to 2003, so 3 years. And when I first went to treatment, which was 2003, that's the first, I went to Eastern Middlesex and Malden. That's the first halfway house. I never went back to the needle after that. I haven't been clean since then, but I never went back to shooting up.
And when you started, did you start with heroin or did you do the OC? Would you?
Oh, it was the OC. It was actually first, it was Vikes, Vikes and Perks, and then soon after the OCs for a little bit, from 98, 99, 2000 into 2001, and then 01, 02, 03
See, like,
was heroin.
I'm so curious because to me, like, that's what I envy. Like, how the fuck did you, after 3 years, so that, which was my next question is like, what was it for you, right? Like, I've been arrested countless times. I went to prison. I went to jail.
Hmm.
None of those were the moment that I went, you know what? The gig's up. I got to do this. So, what after 3 years happened that you went, this is it, dude. I'm done.
Um, there's a few things that come into play. One of them was, it just got to a point, man, no matter what went on for the day, the stealing, the robbing, the crime started to escalate what we were doing, robbing stores, fucking stolen cars, or taking plates off of cars. Like, it started to get crazy. And I just got sick of having to do that every fucking day, man. And it was actually taken away from what I truly enjoyed, which was the painting part. Doing the graffiti and creating and doing that shit.
Wait, when did the painting and the, I guess, art form, when did that stop? That wasn't
Uh,
childhood either. Like, were you mainly into graffiti for the longest point and then at a
yeah.
certain point went, let me start?
Yeah, it was always graffiti, doing pieces, but no like murals, no like intricate artwork, nothing like pretty, no portraits, no flowers, nothing like that. It was always graffiti. So 2003, go to treatment, get a little taste of a halfway house, meet-ins, whatnot. It was kind of like, I like this because it was a new way of life, but I didn't last that long. Then I went on a run with my girl at the time for like the next like year. Ended up in treatment at 25. So 2005 now, end up in treatment. And I want to go to East Boston Rehab. And they're like, the wait's like 4 months. So I waited in Tewksbury Holden for almost 4 months. But I didn't care. I just worked out, played ping pong, started drawing, cutting people's hair. Because at this point now I had become a barber. And, I share this often. I'm in a room, there's 80 guys. I don't know if you've ever been at Tewksbury Holden, but back then there was like 80, 90 guys.
What, like cab to
It was like,
cab?
yeah, it was like fucking pre-release. 6-man rooms, got a shower with dudes. All you can do is work out, fucking play ping pong, play cards. Well, there was a barber chair, which was great for me because I cut everyone's hair. And this guy, Louis Diaz, he was running. He's actually my friend to this day. He's got 28 years now. He comes by the room one day. I got like me and 4 of my boys were all around the bed looking at one of my photo albums. And it had all like trains and all like the street graffiti shit, right? And he comes over and he's like, what the fuck? You did all this? And I was like, well, most of it. I was like, it's me and my boy. This is like my crew of guys I paint with. He was like, man, you should really be doing something with your life with this. This is fucking super. That's super impressive. That's all spray paint. And I was like, yeah, you know, and it just kind of planted a seed. And, I'm there for 3.5 months. You write goals, you're thinking things, right? And I always share this because I don't know about you. I didn't grow up religious. If anything, I actually had a resentment towards God. I am spiritual, and I don't say this story to offend anyone that is into religion, but this was just my story. There was 80 guys downstairs, and someone's like, 1 in 37 addicts makes it. You know what I thought, Shane? I looked to the left and right. I go, I wonder who the fucking other guy is. Because I was like, so it must be me and someone else. And I know it sounds cocky, but that's what I thought. And then I was like, I remember talking to my grandmother, right? My grandmother had passed in 1998. But I was talking to her and I'm like, I just fucking hear all this shit about God. and a higher power and all this stuff, man. It never clicked with me. It never did up until this point. But I knew I had to try something else. I was a fucking heroin addict. I'm robbing and stealing. My friends, I have some friends, Shane, just like you do, that are still locked up, bro. And I was doing the same shit, bro. So I don't like play with this life, man. That's why I was joking with you earlier. And I'm like, Nana, just give me a fucking sign. And they were doing a raffle. You know, they called my motherfucking number, dude. That's when I first started believing in just something. My grandmother's not my higher power, I gotta say that. But I was like, Nana, and I started like tearing up, bro. You know, and I waited a while before I told anyone that story because I just was like, holy fuck, dude, no one's even gonna believe me if I say that right now, you know? And I waited there and they fucking called me, Shane. 4 months later, I went to East Boston Rehab and I put together 8.5 fucking years from that moment, from 2005 to 2013. You know, I was in recovery, heavily in recovery, sponsoring guys, fucking doing stuff, all that stuff. That's where taking Street Smart and this brand and just trying to do something more in life other than just tag. You know, even though I still was heavily into illegal, even in recovery, I was heavily into graffiti, painting trains, MBTAs, like high level, and just it formulated into something. And, you know, I fucking relapsed in 2013 with 8.5 years clean, man.
What'd you stop?
Just like that. What'd you say?
What'd you stop doing? What led to the...
I got really unspiritual. I was in a relationship for a bit, cheating and getting back, cheating, getting back, then was single, and then was like in strip clubs and fucking selling Jews and fucking porn stuff. I mean, my life got crazy, Shane. And it was all ego. Because all you're really bragging about with that stuff was to other guys. Oh, I'm fucking with this one, I'm fucking with that one. I'm going to tell you straight up, dude, at 45 years old right now, telling that story, I was actually super hurt because I had ruined a good relationship. I'm not in recovery. And I thought it was a fucking good idea to drink with 8.5 years clean. And that shit took me 3 years to get back. 3 years. It took 3 years to get back, and a fucking close friend overdosing, man. You know, Greg King, you know, and it fucking killed me.
Is that what led to this, your latest sobriety?
Yeah, because he would come to the shop, you know, every week. I talk about Greg all the time because he passed away a week before I got clean. My clean date's November 9, 2016. He passed away November 2nd. But he was coming into the shop regularly every week. He was a once-a-week guy. And he kept asking me to come back to the men's meet, and you should come back to the men's meet. And he ultimately ended up relapsing, man. He had fucked up a couple times and was keeping it a secret, and it got the best of him, and it fucking took his life, man.
Secrets.
You know? Yep. And I've been there, and that's actually what took me out, and I came back in 2016 and on a fucking mission to be like the best version I could be and to plug back in like I used to, because I know that helping people along with helping me first is a fucking great recipe. And it just formulated into all these great things by just, if it's you versus you and then you fuck with some other guys that also think like that, that's the fucking unity. It's not me versus anyone. And I thought like that for a long time. Those odds suck. You versus everyone else, bro, that's horrible.
That's why I'm grateful I got guys in my life now that are like, dude, I'm so grateful to be in this, rowing this boat with you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's true. And that's what I surround myself with is like, if a ship just crashed at sea and there's only room for, you know, I mean, in real life, there'd only be room for 8, but let's say I have room for 100 guys on there. I want the sharpest guys around me that live this life, that do recovery, that are honest, that can talk about real stuff. You know, what I love about the men that I've met in recovery is that even we can call each other, talk shit, joke around, and at any point in time, drop it into second gear and go, yo, man, I gotta talk to you about some serious shit that's going on with me. And it's like, what's up? You know what I mean? And it's not, you know, the tape that in my head tells me that my friends are gonna make fun of me and tell me I'm the biggest pussy alive and all this shit, and to toughen up, right? And all this stuff, because that's all I got my whole life was toughen up, drink some water, put some fucking duct tape on it, and you're a man, keep it moving, you know? Well, unfortunately, that doesn't work for me. If I go by that logic, I shoot heroin, and then I either die or I'm going to prison for murder, you know? So now tell me, so you've been sober for quite a bit now. So what do you do? What's your day-to-day look like? Where are you working? What are you doing to kind of, I guess, give back and help in the recovery realm?
Yeah, I mean, my day-to-day now is most days get up, go to the gym. Well, before we get my son ready for school, and that's mainly her job, but I help. And go to the gym. Some days I got group to run at the center. My best friend owns Process Recovery Center and Rise Above Sober Living, so I help out with all the housing and behavioral stuff. So a huge part of my day to day is just helping addicts and people that are in treatment. And then it's also with the artwork. I could be, here, Massachusetts, fucking New Jersey, New York, all over New England, or in the studio doing custom stuff like you see in the background. This is my actual personal studio, which is nice. Never had that my whole life. So it's nice to, have this at home where I can create. And I try to create daily. I try to work out daily. I try to help someone, and I try to grow. And sometimes you might fall short. Sometimes it might be none of those things other than just stay clean, be present, be a dad, fucking. I'm motivated by what I didn't have. So a lot of stuff that we talked about, being younger, I didn't have a dad or anyone to really like nurture and look out for me. So that's exactly what's motivated me to be a dad.
You ever find yourself like, I got to imagine the gratitude's huge too, where you just like, there's times where I sit back in my house or something and I'm going, how, dude, how do I have any of this shit? How do I, I was this close to doing life in prison, this close to being taken out in a lawn clipping bag. You know what I mean? And now I get to wake up not dope sick. People rely on me. People call me for help. People call me for guidance. I get to do all these things. And it's like you said, it's not always perfection. It's not always pretty. There's still some days I get pissed. I want to kick my dog, all that stuff, But it's like more often than not, I'm able to sit in this exact chair that I'm at and look at this and be like, dude, I own this house. That's crazy. Do the authorities know that? Like, are they cool with everything that's happening? I just opened an LLC and started my own business. Like, do they know that? Is that cool? Like when I go to the bank and I walk in there and it's like, and I was on I'm texting my buddy and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to the bank. And he's like, hopefully not to rob it. And it's like, haha, it's a joke. But imagine that that's how people know you as. And now like I'm going in there to be like, here's my EIN for my business and here's what my business is. And I get to tell the story about what it is that I'm doing and how I'm trying to help people and give back and do all these things. It's mind blowing, dude.
It is. I sometimes pull in my driveway and I'm not even on a phone call and I'm just like reflecting or listening to music, and I'll just kind of glance over at my house, and I got a truck and nice house, my son, my girl. Shit looks good. I come in the fucking studio. I have artwork. I have fucking more paint than fucking Blick in my fucking studio. Another thing over here, paintings everywhere. And the cool thing about this journey, Shane, is that when you come from such fucked up past like us, what I really reflect on is how much I caused. I try not to really dwell on what happened to me or my dad not being there. When you can focus on where you switched mentally, I think that's why I'm able to constantly stay in gratitude most days.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah. Because when you dwell on what happened or just circumstantial things that you can't change, it's like a lose-lose battle. But when you look at what we've come from and what we did, and the reason why it's like that, Shane, is because you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, man. All right, I get a couple more for you here, and then we'll shuffle you on out. What's the hardest part of this life that people don't see on social media?
Hold on, say the beginning part again, because it cut out.
What's the hottest part of this life that people don't see on social media?
Oh,
and you can apply that to recovery, graffiti, art, all the murals. I mean, dude, I just watched that mural that you just did on the side of that hotel.
Oh, the hotel.
I mean, man, that's days and days and days, but we all get to see the reels and the highlights of you doing it, and then next thing you know, it's just done. But so what's the hottest part of everything that you got going on that we're not seeing on social media?
There's two things one, it's the working in treatment and helping addicts, or I should say whether you work in treatment or you work in recovery. And what I mean by that is, and this is just my opinion, I know a lot of people agree, but I got to say it. Working as an addict that's in recovery, that's if you're like sponsoring guys, doing shit in a 12-step fellowship, that's free. I also work in treatment, which is also part of my career. the toughest part that people don't see, that I know other people got to deal with that work in treatment, is all these addicts that come in sick, suffering, battling, hurt, broken, whatever way you want to use it. A lot of them that aren't truly willing to put the work in to get better, you end up being the bad guy. You end up getting the negative messages after if they get kicked out. You get threatened, you get this or whatever, and many have died. And that's the flip side of this addiction that people aren't seeing is, yes, it's super gratifying when you see someone get this, but most don't. And I have a wallet full of former clients and friends that have passed. And I don't say this for a pat on the back or like to be like a sob story. I say it because most people, especially that I deal with and work with, we do this because we truly give a fuck. And it's going to keep getting worse. But the flip side that people don't see on social media is the dark side, the phone calls, the letting someone know that their family member passed or letting someone know that their friend passed and stuff like that. And then on the flip side with the artwork is that, like when you just brought up the hotel, what people aren't seeing in that highlight reel, right? Because social media is not fucking real. And there's parts of that mural that I mentally almost tapped out on because of how nerve-wracking it was to go up that high. And it was cold, and it's a battle. And then that's where being an addict in recovery and someone just that battles with mindset, I was like, no, we got to power through this. Fuck this. I've been waiting my whole life for jobs like this. And this is where I started to have a pep talk with myself. I literally started to say, fuck that. I'm not letting fear win. And we got up there and we finished it. And guess what? They were so happy with it. And they already booked us for another location in a different section of Mass.
That's amazing.
But you don't see that in a video.
Was there ever a time that you said, fuck this, like I'm done. I'm done painting. I'm done doing graffiti. I don't want to do this anymore. And if so, what ultimately prevented you from doing that?
There was never like an angry, like fuck this, I'm done. What I did do though, that time that I went back in 2005, I said I went and waited 4.5 months to wait to East Boston rehab. There was a time while I was in there, I think it only lasted a few weeks to a month, but I remember being so dead set and wanting to be fucking clean and just like try this recovery thing out that part of me was like, I can't even tag. And I wouldn't even fucking catch a tag. But I don't know how long that lasted. I know it wasn't that whole 4.5 months.
And the thinking of like that it's old behavior and, you clean, like you remove the drugs and alcohol, but still doing kind of.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that at all. And then I don't know what it was, but I remember, well, that same guy, Louis Diaz, had asked me to do like experience, strength, and hope, some lettering on the benches. And some guys were visiting their kids that they hadn't seen in a while. So I was doing birthday cards or cutting hair and doing designs and whatnot. And then I just I said, fuck it. And then I went full back into it because when I got out, when I went to East Boston Rehab, there used to be a spot called the Ave right down there, the abandoned train tracks down there. It was a spot that you could paint for years. When I went to East Boston Rehab, I started painting under there while I was in the halfway house. And a funny story what was his name? Tom? Yeah, Tom. I forget his last name, but he was one of the staff. And when I showed him that same book that Louis Diaz was like, yo, man, you should be fucking doing something with this. I had showed the guy Tom that, and I thought he was kidding. He goes, I used to work for the Graffiti Busters, right? And I was like, what? And he was joking about it. And he's an old school like crackhead from Lynn, but he's like, yeah, I used to actually remove all that shit.
Like an old school crackhead from Lynn.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, we're fucking enemies, man. So it was always like a joke. And I'll never forget one day I was going there Halloween to go to paint. And he's seen clearly that I had, like a roller and a fucking backpack and shit. And I remember him just kind of giving me a head nod where I was like, yo, he knows I'm going to paint. He's okay with it. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
All right. What would you tell someone who feels stuck or angry or convinced they already screwed up their life?
That they already screwed, like there's no shot to to get away from addiction or alcoholism.
Yeah, why even try?
I guess the biggest thing I would say with that, if someone out there is stuck, and believing their negative thinking. You have to realize that's the same thinking that said that doing the drugs and partying and drinking was a good idea. So it's going to take more than you're thinking to get out of it. So you're going to probably need the help of others, because I always believe the bullshit that was going on in my head until I found recovery, because it still talks shit to you even with time. So I kind of do it in a way to relate with people to be like, hey, if we're new and we don't even know what recovery, being sober even looks like, just know that whatever fucked up brain is telling you that you don't have a shot and all this negative shit is full of shit, because it also told you shooting heroin was a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, when it gets broken down like that, people realize because you can't outwit this. This isn't about outwitting it. You have to do the shit.
I think about like, you know, I know a kid that's been having a tough time. He's been coming in and out. And, you know, I tell people all the time, for me, when I got sober, it was like, never mind removing the drugs, never mind that you gotta do therapy and stuff. It was picking up the phone and calling another man. That was such a foreign thing to me, that I call another man and go, I'm really having a tough time. I don't know what to do. That wasn't encoded in my DNA. Things aren't going well, tough shit, figure it out. Figure it out and keep going. Screw up and keep going, you know? And that, it's like they say, like the phone is so heavy, you know? And it's like, what I found was I called people before shit hit the fan. Because if shit already hit the fan, that just added another 450 pounds to that phone. But if I practice that when things aren't too shitty, and I go, oh man, that's a 100-pound phone, but I guess, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? How's your day? Okay, great, yep. Whew, I made it through that. I didn't die. I didn't fucking get AIDS, right? And you do that and do that so that when the shit does hit the fan, the phone is not as heavy and you're able to call up. But that for me, man, was always the toughest thing, with thinking about like, I have to admit to another guy that I'm not okay.
I think that the theory with the phone too, I bring this up going back to like the comedy piece. My biggest thing to get people to willingly open up is if you can crack through people's egos, which sometimes is going to be through humor, you can then get to their spirit. And I'd say, so you guys probably have a hard time calling a guy or getting a list of numbers at the meeting, right? And the guys, they'll like laugh, like, yeah, fuck that. I go, but you definitely called a guy that barely speaks English and copped whatever the fuck he gave you off the pure hope shot. I'm going to shoot this in the alleyway and feel happy, right? And these dudes will die laughing. And I go up to a door in the group room and I'll knock on it, open it up, and I go, I reach my arm in, right? Guy don't even speak English. He gives me it. I need to get high so bad that sometimes broad daylight, I just go up into the stairwell of the Charlestown Projects, and whatever the fuck this guy gave me, I'm banging in my arm to be happy. You know what the difference is? You guys are okay with instant gratification, but not delayed. So you're not going to fucking talk to that guy, because when Flacco's on the phone, that phone is only 4 ounces. And when Phil, the guy that's got 10 years sober, when he's on the other end of the phone, you don't like that you're probably going to sound a little bit like a bitch, because that's what I sounded like, straight up like, oh, fucking. But it's me calling myself a bitch. I've never had the guy on the other end say that.
Yep.
And it's the truth. And when you can break it down or, you know, come up with a little theory to make someone laugh, what is the funniest shit in life, Shane? The truth.
Yeah.
The fucking truth. So when you can break down the theory of the phone, but I do agree 100% what you said. If you think that you're just going to call a guy when everything's a fucking disaster, it's not happening. You should probably try to call that guy a few, 4 or 5 times, you know, and talk about some simple shit. Like I say, call a guy up. Maybe you got to talk about the Red Sox or the Celtics. I love sports. I'm a huge sports guy. I would just make sure that before I get off the phone with my boy that I know I'm hurting and I got to talk, I can't stay talking about the Celtics. It's got to switch to, you know, I broke up with my girl, or I lost my job, or whatever the case is. You can't talk about the nonsense the whole time.
And that's like what I was talking about earlier about, you know, being able to have these guys that you can call, talk shit, talk sports, talk shop, blah, blah, blah. But before you get off that phone, if there's some real shit that's eating at you, you better air it out and figure it out. You know, if not, it's the wrong guy. Pick up the phone and try until you get somebody that works with. But I like that. I like that analogy about that, you know, you had no problem calling the drug dealer, and it's like, never mind calling him. I'm like, dude, you need me to wash your wheels when you get here, whatever you need. You need me to take care of your kid for the weekend, whatever you need, I'm here for you, my guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you held the medicine for a long time.
because when he shows up, it's instant. The flip side with these guys you're going to talk to on the other end of this phone, in some stuff, it actually can be a little bit instant. At least that's just my opinion. Certain conversations that are so truthful and so raw, when you start to see a solution, in my experience, you start to feel a little bit better.
Right.
The same way that when you felt the bag when you were sick. Now it's just the mental part.
All right. What do you wish someone told you when you were a kid trying to find your way? Whether it would have made a difference or not, that you would have been an alcoholic or an addict. But what do you wish that there was something someone had said when you were a kid?
Yeah. Go at the fear and stop prolonging running from it. Because the best analogy that worked for me that I use with people is I was running from me for so long, and it's a simple theory, and I'm not the first one or the last one to use it, but I always was just running from me. It's like the bird flying away from the storm. And my best days didn't come until I turned around and went towards the whole shitstorm. Go towards why you're still bothered that your grandmother died. Go at that you didn't have a fucking dad. Go at that you were fucking picked on and moved around a lot. All that stuff. Because guess what? It never went away fully, Shane. I'm just able to glance at it. I don't have to fucking stay dwelling on it. And it helps me talk to other dudes and women that battle that still to this day. Because sometimes they just need to hear someone say that. And I just kept running from fear. Just to stop and basically have more fear anyway. You know, it's a fucking human trait. But fear, 100%. Most of it's like man-made in our fucking head. Then you have anxiety off of emotions that it's like a fucking fake movie. Because we suffer the repercussions of our thoughts, whether it's fact or fiction. So I like to fucking go at the fear and realize, dude, I'm only thinking this because I'm weighing out what could possibly happen. But what if everything goes right?
Right, right.
What if you pull into your own driveway with a truck and your wife and a kid, and that's your house and the nice grass and the fucking studio? What if? Because if you told me that years ago, I'd be like, you're bugging.
Your neighbors say hello to you and have respect for you.
Oh, yeah. All my neighbors are like 60. We have such a nice neighborhood. It's like they fucking wave.
Yeah.
One guy, when we first moved in, he was even snow blowing the front of the driveway. Now I fucking have a snow blower now. It's like, holy, who's this guy?
Real, dude. Well, listen, man. Like I said, dude, you're somebody that I value and like consider a really close friend, and it's crazy to think that we've never, even sat down and broke bread together. That blows my fucking mind. But there's crazier things that have happened in life, but I got a lot of love for you. I got a lot of respect for you, and I really appreciate you coming out, and thank you for fucking breaking the ice and being my first guest. Give everyone your handles if you want to, for where they can follow you, where they can get your stuff, and I'll make sure I put all that stuff in the description as well.
Yeah, the main two that I use are the Facebook with the JMac, and then for Instagram, it's at the Baxter. So at THE_BACKSTAH.
Word. Send him a message on Instagram if you're interested in the street smart shit, and he'll get you squared away. But yeah, man, much appreciated. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for checking out the podcast and the continued support. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys next week.